next presenter is Miguel. Again, sorry for my mispronunciation, if I do mispronounce. Miguel A. Vela-Tafalla is a research fellow at the University of Zaragoza in Spain. His current interests are the role and status of English in the domain of academic communication. In his PhD, he's looking into academic spoken genres for research communication purposes, especially in digital environments, seeking to describe phonological features of international scientific English and the role of intonation in such contexts. Connected research interests are English phonetics and pronunciation teaching, corpus linguistics, and computer science. Miguel?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll be sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes, everything looks fine.
Okay, so I want to start by thanking you, Ferit and Joanna, for your introduction and for having me, right? Shall I start?
Please do.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So then I'm going to be talking today, this is the title of my talk, Speaking Science, Teaching the Pronunciation of English for International Context. So the idea is that Anna has already provided a lot of information, very useful information on these issues about internationalization and interculturalization and so on. And then Marianne has showed us some specific cases, right, and about her research. And then I'm going to be talking about a, let's say, more specific issue, and that's the pronunciation of English and how we are to teach it, or what we are to teach to speakers who want to speak English in this context, right? International context, intercultural context. Some ideas have already been shared about the native speaker being, eluded or disappearing or something like that, right? So we're going to be talking about this, about teaching, because this is international dialogue on English language teaching, about teaching English to, let's say, scientists, to people who want to use English for science communication and in this type of context. Okay, so briefly, I'm going to be talking about models and targets in pronunciation teaching from the general point of view of pronunciation studies, right? What I believe the audience might be familiar with about pronunciation and phonetics and so on for English teaching, for teaching English. Then I want to put the emphasis on genres for science communication and having a look at science communication as a phenomenon and how it manifests in genres, and I'll be introducing that. And then I'll show you a case study from my PhD study, right, from my research about a specific genre, and you will find out what those acronyms mean. And then a brief discussion about the issues that I'm going to bring about. Okay, so going to Crutzen in 2014 and talking about models and targets in pronunciation, you see that he distinguishes basically these three models, right? We have the native models, which I don't think I need to explain. It's just teaching English as it is spoken by speakers of British English, of American English, of Australian English, of Nigerian English, whatever you want. And then Crutzen, in order to talk about teaching, introduces these two concepts: amalgam English and international English, right? And I believe you can see my laser pointer there, right? He talks about users of English as an international language, and how many of them, many users of English, don't have a realistic possibility or necessity to acquire a standard native speaker-like accent, right? And so he talks about people who use English as a lingua franca within their own country and who may only have limited meetings with L1 speakers. And then he talks about amalgam English based on an amalgam of native speaker Englishes. That is an amalgam, a mixture, right? Just putting together a lot of different features from American English, from British English, even from the local L1, that is English that is influenced by the fact that I have learned English in Spain and that my English sounds more Spanish than other people's, right? And then he moves on to this more extreme position of what he calls international English, and you will see why I emphasize what he calls international English. And he talks about English as a lingua franca, as a minimum standard for occasional communication. And I think that this example is interesting. Non-English speaking businessmen who use English as the common language between them. So a very incidental kind of usage, right? Just people who use English, not very often really, but just they happen to come across some people sometimes and they need to use English and they do, right? So we have these three models. Sorry about that. I guess you can hear it. Okay, and then having talked about this, I want to move on to Montpean. He's talking about consumers' preferences, right? He's talking about criteria for choosing models of English and for choosing targets, right? There are 6 types of criteria, and I'll comment on the most interesting ones. Montpean is talking about communicative criteria for choosing a model of English, and that's where intelligibility appears, and I believe that's important, being understood, but also exposure. And exposure means the fact that, for instance, I am more likely as a Spaniard to be exposed to British English, or I don't know, or to American English on HBO or something like that, right? Then geocultural criteria of proximity, of the fact that, British English is closer to me geographically, but American English may be closer to us generally now culturally. And then criteria to do with linguistic policies, to the fact that, the European Union has created these rules that, the country or national curricula and the authorities have said that we should be doing this or that, right? Those are very important criteria. Then we have social psychological criteria, and these are very important at a personal level because you cannot learn something that you don't want to learn, let's say. And there are the special attitudes, values, and views that speakers and learners may have about British English. Maybe you don't like British English, you don't like the sound of it, or you think that it's not the right kind of English, I don't know. Or that Scottish English doesn't sound right, or something like that. Then there are pedagogical criteria, that is, first of all, materials. Many materials are written in let's call it British English. More materials may be available in British, American English, but then also teachability. How easy is it to teach certain models of English, right? Is it very easy to teach perfect native like British English? Maybe it's easier to teach American English or Scottish English or, I don't know, Indian English. I don't know, it might be easier, right, to teach for a speaker of, I don't know, of another language, right? And then linguistic or phonetic criteria that have to do with, for instance, the number of phonemes that there are in a particular variety, or how important the differences are for communication actually, and how similar the L1 is to the specific model that we are talking about, right? And then my question is, okay, this is all very good from the general perspective about phonetics and phonology and pronunciation, but then what about English in higher education, in academia, in science communication? Can we talk about native models, amalgam English, international English? Was Crattenden's example equivalent, international English or amalgam English? Was it equivalent to what we have in higher education? And I don't think so, because we don't have occasional incidental usages of English, right? We don't have people who happen to sometimes speak English, or people who on certain very specific environments speak English. No, what we have is people who are sharing research in English, and they do it by default in English. It is institutionalized, as you can see here. There are policies and practices that value English, right? People expect you to use English, people require you to use English in order to advance and so on, right? So there is no real choice about using English. And maybe the question would be, are there choices about the models? Can you use any type of English, or are there also constraints about the type of English that you are allowed to use, right? Is intelligibility enough? Will you be accepted? Will you be invited to do a plenary talk if your English is, it's very foreign sounding, for instance, I'm raising questions, not answering them, right? Okay, then what I say is, let's change the perspective, because I don't think the pronunciation expert's perspective is enough, right? You have here a table about, well, it's not a table, right? A chart about, this is part of my PhD research about a questionnaire that I administered. And you have this question: how important is the item for professional success in a career, in a research career, right? And then, so you have here good written English, good spoken English. You see that generally they are considered important. But then if we go to native-like pronunciation and native-like intonation, to native-like pronunciation and native-like intonation, you see how they are considered irrelevant or slightly important. So not really important. So researchers themselves, who are the ones that answered this questionnaire, don't think that you should have a native-like pronunciation or a native-like intonation, right? So then how do we get to this point of understanding what the researchers want, what the researchers need, right? And then my answer is genre analysis, right? That is looking at the context where English is being used. Bhatia defines genre analysis as the study of situated linguistic behavior in institutionalized academic or professional settings. First of all, it is situated. This means that it is not just a handbook about pronunciation, talking about what could happen or what kind of English businessmen could be using. No, it's situated. We want to know exactly what, or as close as possible to what exactly researchers are doing. Then we're talking about linguistic behavior, right? So language is behavior, and this is important because it means that people can learn it, people can change it. It is not given. And then it is institutionalized, as we've been talking about internationalization, policies, interculturalization, and we have these academic and professional settings, right? You have different ways of conceptualizing genre, but what matters is that genres are, these classes of events, these types of events. For instance, the research article or the talk, the seminar that we're having today, or these are important for defining what is actually happening, right? That they are constraining this behavior that is situated, that is very specific. In order to understand the importance of genre, I want to, very briefly comment on this chart, which, is more complex than what I'm going to say, right? Because this is about activity theory and so on. But what matters is, the reason why I think this is relevant is because it shows how the subject that wants to do something to achieve an outcome is necessarily in an intricate relationship with the mediational means, with the tools that they are using to achieve the outcome. And that's where machines, writing, speaking, genres, gestures, every type of communication, and this is where genres come in, according to Spinozzi and Sacri, genres are very relevant because they are the tools that we are using to disseminate research that a biologist is using to talk about biology. This biologist is using a specific type of text, not anything, not what, they have to be talking about something specific. Okay, and that's why context is very important. And then I have this chart from systemic functional linguistics, and I'm bringing it here because it models context in relation to pronunciation. How so? And that's very important for me and for the type of reflection that I'm guiding you along, right? Because genre is this part of context that is, so genres are part of context. These types of events that are available are constraining the type of language that we are going to be using. They are constraining the register, the syntax that we are going to be using. You cannot use any syntax for any purpose. And that's constraining, that's limiting or allowing for specific instances of morphology, and of course of phonology, of pronunciation, of intonation patterns, of ways of speaking. I might not speak the same way here at this context, in this very specific genre, maybe in the questions and answers, which would be a switch in the type of interaction, my phonology is different and my intonation is different, or the attention I pay to specific phonemes is different, right? So we need to have this whole picture in order to talk about pronunciation and so on. So my case study, what I want to share with you is that I've been having a look for a very long time now as part of my PhD at the Journal of Visualized Experiments. This is a journal that presents video methods articles. Those are videos where researchers are carrying out research and they are showing it, right? They are showing their methodology so that people can do the same later, right? And I have been focusing, following Havner's study, on the researcher's introduction. That's a section. This is the part where, and I want to show you, this is the part where, is he moving? Yes. This is the part where you see here, these researchers are facing the camera and explaining what the research is about, right? And you see the researchers are there talking. And this is where I believe we should more easily see the researchers actually carrying out the research, doing what they are doing, right? They are not just showing methodology, they are speaking and talking about the research and using pronunciation, intonation, right? Okay, so case study, I have looked at those researchers' introductions and what have I found? What is pronunciation like in these? Of course, this is a generalization from a corpus of 48 sections like this. But what I have found in general is that the pronunciation is, or the pronunciation of researchers is heavily accented. And this means, of course, a foreign accent, generally. It is sometimes unintelligible. I have had to have a look at closed captions, and even the closed captions may be wrong sometimes, and I cannot retrieve the actual word because they are very specialized words that the researcher meant. Syllables are missing. There are inaccurate phonemes that I cannot retrieve. There is wrong stress placements, very long words that, the stress is not at the right point where it should be phonologically. And then there are no weakening effects. There are no schwas, no weak vowels. Everything is said with a lot of emphasis like this, right? This is about pronunciation in general. What about intonation? What have I found in this type of foreign accented pronunciation and so on by researchers, right? Very small chunks. This means a lot of pauses. Saying a couple words, stop. A couple more words, stop. So it's not a very fluent discourse, right? There are a lot of pauses. There is no de-accenting. This means that every word has emphasis. Then I have unfinished tones. Because I have a lot of chunks, many of those chunks don't have a tone, don't have an intonation pattern that can be identified. And even like that, or the effect is that it is many times monotone. It's just like the same time of intonation is repeated. You have your repetitive. There's the same tone always. And even though I am saying that everything is getting accents, the effect is that sometimes, many times, it sounds unemphatic. It sounds like it is not clear what you should be paying attention to, because everything sounds important, because they are not making use of intonation, of English intonation, as a native speaker would, or a proficient speaker do, right? Now, this is my case study. Why is it important to look at this? Can we just say that this is bad pronunciation, bad intonation, that it should not be done? Well, I'm not sure, because this is published. This is peer-reviewed, if you know what that is. This means that it has appeared after a process by which it has been approved. And a lot of people have had a look at it. It has been recorded. It could have been recorded again if a mistake had been found. And I believe it was found. I don't know. So these, let's call them mistakes, have been accepted. And this is very relevant because it means that it is accepted in this type of genre, maybe not another type of genre, but it was prepared and it was accepted, right? Then you remember my triangle? Researchers are using language as a tool in the research activity. They are carrying out an activity and they are just, let's say, using language, using the genres, using pronunciation, because they must, because they want to talk, to do what they want to do, right? And then genre is constraining the phonological performance necessarily. The type of event that where they are at is making the type of pronunciation that they are using. I believe that the way they talk is not the same way they would talk in other contexts, right? And then the question, of course, is, okay, so what model do we teach if this is what we find? If we want to teach people about scientific English, what do we teach? And then, just to end, remember that the model is different from the targets. This means that what we're looking at as a model, maybe British English, to say one, doesn't need to be the target, doesn't need to be what we want our speakers to talk like, right? And we need to have a model. So we might have a native model, or we might have the model of the videos, just playing the videos in class and telling people that they can talk like that. But I would say that an array of varied models is more interesting, both native and non-native, showing these videos to researchers and making them aware of the reality of science communication. And then, of course, the target can be very far from the native model. It can be up to the learner's goals, wishes, and capabilities, you know, because everyone might want to or might achieve a level of pronunciation that is different. And then, of course, better pronunciation strategies will contribute to a successful career, but are not quintessential. Because you see, those are successful researchers, the ones that they have analyzed, that have published their research. And they don't have the best pronunciation ever, but there they are. But we need to teach people to pronounce, you know, the better they pronounce, the better for their careers. The more probably it will help them be successful, right? And this is basically my conclusion. I want to thank you again. You have my website here. Now I can, of course, post them. And I want to thank my funders and so on. So thank you very much. I don't know how much time I took.
No, Miguel, so everything is fine. Thank you so much for your presentation. Could you please, you know, keep the last slide on the screen? I mean, your contact information, the one which includes your contact information. Yeah, just a second. Yeah, okay. So if you know some audience would be interested in getting, you know, in touch with you, yeah, they can use the email address provided on this slide. Okay. Again, thank you so much for your informative presentation. And this is also, you know, a very, you know, heated discussion, you know, teaching the pronunciation of English, but which English, you know, somebody might ask that question, you know. Yeah, and sometimes, you know, our students and, you know, most learners ask the question, you know, how can we improve our pronunciation? Then based on what you know, discussed in your presentation, Miguel, what would you be the response in your opinion? If somebody, you know, if a learner asks the question, how can I improve my pronunciation? And then comes the question, you know, which English or which model, right, Miguel? So what would be the response to that student's question? You know that there are a variety of, you know, websites, you know, which includes videos, you know, authentic materials, etc. Some, you know, websites or materials focus on just, you know, British English, American English, or other, you know, world Englishes, if you want. So what would be the response to that, you know, learner's question, Miguel? How would you
So,
that?
Thank you, Ferit, for your question. So, of course, my contention and what I've been saying for the last, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, is that we should have a look at the let's call it target context, right? That's what we call the target situation, and that's what we call it in English for specific purposes, right? Where do you want to use English? Because first of all, this person, this hypothetically, is asking, how can I improve my pronunciation, right? the first thing is, okay, so you do want to improve your pronunciation, right?
Yeah.
Have a look at these people. They are using English in an international context, and they, you know, they are being understood, they are being published, everything is going fine, right? Okay,
Yeah.
you want to improve it, and then I don't know, because the situations may be very, you know, maybe a great amount of variation, and some people might actually, you know, for, you know, even as a personal hobby, want to speak perfect British English and sound like the Queen. I don't know, this may happen. So this is us to the models, right? So I think that this is a very personal question, and we as teachers, and that's the important part, let's say, we as teachers need to be able to guide them to where they want to get, right? We shouldn't be imposing models or telling them, no, you need to be talking like an American because this is easier. No, I don't know. Maybe we have a highly motivated student that wants to learn, I don't know, Australian English. I don't know. Everything could happen, right? But then once we know that, then we can say, okay, how do you improve your pronunciation? Well, what is your target situation? Is it science videos? Okay, watch a lot of science videos, analyze them, work on them, and, you know, practice it. Go to science events, because it's actually the best way to learn it, right? We can have in-class activities that emulate these type of videos. We can ask our students to produce videos like these, right? So they are ready for the actual genres that are being used today, right? It is no longer a realistic objective to be teaching our students just to write essays. They need to be, you know, talking in videos and delivering presentations online and so on, right?
Okay. So Miguel, so I agree with you on you know, what you said. So if, you know, if somebody wants to, you know, study in the United States, for example, right? They need to study, for example, American English, and most of the time they are required to take the TOEFL test, right? So it depends on the purpose, actually. And it depends on how you would use the language, for what purpose and in what context. But at least I think the minimum should be the intelligibility, right? We
Sure.
should be able to understand at least.
But then that's a very complex concept, right?
Yeah, so sure. So intelligibility is also, you know, again, a heated discussion topic. Why, you know, according to whom, for example, because intelligibility might change from one situation to another. But in such a case, for example, I would be saying that at least you should be able to get the message across, right? If the other person, you know, will be able to understand, you know, what you are trying to say, from my own perspective, of course, it would be enough, at least for me. Okay, I'm checking the chat box. You know, there are some questions, but, you know, we're looking for questions about the presentation, of course. Teaching pronunciation, the genre analysis. So could you please, you know, type your questions in chat box, or alternatively, you can raise your virtual hands so that, you know, we can unmute your microphones and you can ask your questions in person. Okay, I'm waiting. And Joanna, would you like to say, or would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you very much, Miguel. It was really very interesting, especially again in the context of the previous presentations. I find your research, your study very challenging as well. And my question is, because you also try to present that there is this pluricentric approach to language. In terms of pronunciation, what would be the next stage of your research? What would you like to what would be your plan to do?
Yeah, thank you, Joanna, for this very interesting question, because right, I'm at this stage where I should be thinking about that, right? So let's say that I've been developing the methods to deal with this type of questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the idea would be to expand the objects that can be explored. So for instance, I've only been looking at this very specific genre, but it would be, I believe, very interesting to look at other genres, compare them and show how they are different. And that's when everything will start to, you know, be especially, let's say, useful, and saying, okay, yes, I have, let's say, proved that you need to be aware of the context and that genre and pronunciation are related. And this has not, to the best of my knowledge, has not been explored thoroughly. But then, okay, let's have a look at other genres and how pronunciation is there, right? And I believe that's what needs to be done, and then keep developing the methods too, so that the results are better. But I believe what I want to do next is I want to look at pronunciation and intonation in other genres, and because every genre, you know, is a world full of interesting things, because the genre has to do with all the context about it and the people using them, and that's really interesting.
Thank you very much. We are looking forward to your previous, further research. So thank you very much.